Hey people, it's Kelly of Print Pray Slay, and I am diving into my annotations for The Shack. So right now we are on chapter 2. So I already went through and did a video on the post-its and the flags and the highlighters and pen that I used. And this is the key that I have. But let me get through it. So here's the Shack Report table of contents. Here's the forward. There's a previous video on the forward. Chapter 1. Sorry about the puppy whining. All right, and here is chapter 2. All right, so chapter 2 goes into the gathering dark. All right, nothing makes us lonely as nothing makes us so lonely as our secrets. All right. So again, nothing really here. And then, hold on one second. So, oh goodness. All right. All right. So we are at chapter 2. So I highlighted, he still didn't know what to think of, and he didn't want Nan included if it turned out to be some kind of cruel joke. So Nan and the kids come home. You know, the snowstorm happened from chapter 1. And but Nan pays attention to Mac's wound. Remember I said he fell, he hit his head, and like a whole bunch of gravel and everything is in his head. So he is loving the, attention that he's getting from Nan, but he thinks about the note, like it's not like out of his mind. But he still didn't mention it to her because he's kind of conflicted on whether or not it's real or it's some kind of cruel joke. And I said here on my notes that he still considers that it may be something real to the note, not just a cruel joke. Because if it was a cruel joke, he'd have canceled it out. But he's really, really entertaining the thought of it possibly really being Papa, really being God that wrote him this note. So I said shortly, and I didn't say this, I highlighted, shortly after the summer that Missy vanished, the great sadness had draped itself around Mac's shoulders like some invisible but also tangibly heavy quilt. All right, so the great sadness is because of Missy's vanishing. So I'll make that a point right here, which all the way deserves this flag, because we're like, for the forward and the chapter 1, you're like, what in the world is this great sadness? Like, what happened? And so we don't find out until chapter 2 that it has something to do with Missy vanishing. So I don't know if she ran away, she was taken, what is going on with Missy. But we know that the great sadness is caused because of her, and it's because of the summer. All right. So something happened in the summertime with their youngest daughter. All right. Lower, we see that Mac is dealing with these visions or these night terrors, in which Missy is running down a wooden path ahead of him, and she's completely oblivious to the dark shadow tracking her from behind. And Mac is always too late or impotent in order to save her. And he wakes up feeling with guilt and regret. So I said, this is a bit more information on what happened to Missy. I said, but it also shows that Mac blames himself. All right. Guilt and regret means he blames himself. All right. Then it says Mac boldly decided to take the 3 younger children on a camping trip. So we get into like the setting of what is about to happen with this character that brings on, with these characters that brings on this not Great Depression, what is it? Great sadness? Yeah, this great sadness. So they're going on this camping trip. All right, camping trip, I'm assuming in the summer. Yep, summer's last hurrah. Because that's when he said the summer that something happened to Missy in which she vanished. So we're going to get into that. I underline boldly and confident, knowing the definitions, but to really point out that Mac felt like he was enough to do this. He boldly decided to take his 3 younger children on a camping trip. Mac was confident that he possessed the right combination of outdoorsmanship and mothering skills since Nan couldn't go. But he says Nan had taught him well. Narrator speaking, which is Willie. We found that out at the very end of the forward. But here we have bold and confident, and before we have guilt, regret, and impotent. All right. So once upon a time, he felt like this was something that he can do. And I guess he overestimated his self to the point where later on he goes into feeling guilt and regret for his decision to go either take the kids or to take them without their mother. All right. So this goes into them packing for the trip. We get a little glimpse into who Missy is and how innocent she is. She's a little girl. All right. She's like to the point where, hold on a second, how can I hold this down? To the point where she has this bug collection. So she's a very, very young girl. And it really just shows how free and loving, like it really draws you into the character to make you fall in love with her little innocence. And no one, it's like they paint this picture that you don't want anything bad to happen to Missy, right? Ooh, this is paged and flipped. All right. So again, we are getting this picture of Missy and her personality. She's very forward. She has this talk about her in which she is not scared to like be bold in asking of her parents. So she really wants to take this insect collection to on this camping trip with them. Her father says yes, her mother says no, and she accepts it. So that's really what's going on with that until they get to these falls. All right, so they're at the falls. Missy asks her father to tell her the legend of the beautiful Indian maid, the daughter of the chief of a tribe, and Mac ends up telling her the story. This whole section is the story. All right, so basically what happens in the story is there's a great sickness that falls on the tribe. So her people, so she's the princess, and it says that, like, legend has it that a person would have to sacrifice themselves in order to save them from their sickness. Like once they pass away, all the people who are sick will be healed. And so the princess toils with doing this brave act. Sorry, every time I walk away, I have to come back and hold the book. All right. Sorry about that. So after reading the story, there's this correlation between what happens with the princess and how she ends up killing herself by jumping off of this cliff. It becomes the falls because then the rain comes, well, the water comes from as if to be crying from the falls for the sacrifice that this princess made for her people. Of course, the great sorrow is there, but the people are healed, and it seems to be because of the sacrifice of the princess, sacrificing herself for the greater good of her people. And so this little blurb here I write is how the story ties into the theme of this book. It says, Missy usually loved the telling almost as much as Mac did. It had all the elements of the true redemption story, not unlike the story of Jesus that she knew so well. It centered on a father who loved his only child and sacrificed foretold by a prophet. Because of love, the child willingly gave up her life to save her betrothed and their tribes from certain death. All right. So I like how, because I was wondering, I didn't get that when I was watching the movie. I was wondering why they went into this part of the movie, because again, in the movie they tend to take stuff out from the book, but to see that this is in the book and in the movie, it made it seem like it did have some type of significance, and that is what that significance is. The girls later on um, dive into their thoughts on that story as well. My highlights here are about the setting. So there's a lot into the setting. I think that's in every book, but I kind of am really, really liking it. So Mac's heart was suddenly penetrated by unexpected joy. A sunset of brilliant colors and patterns played off the few clouds that had waited in the wings to become central actors in this unique presentation. He was a rich man, he thought to himself, in all the ways that mattered. So I said, as soon as clouds and the sky were mentioned, I too felt his joy. Because I'm really, really, really digging clouds. Like they're my jam. They make me feel close to God. Like when I'm in them, like on a plane, it's just this overwhelming feeling. Like it's real, and I love looking up and looking at them. So any mention of clouds, I was on it. So that is why it deserved this flag right here of blue, which is for joy. All right. It said Matt could lie and gaze up into the vastness for hours. He felt so incredibly small, yet comfortable with himself. Of all the places he sensed the presence of God, out here, surrounded by nature and under the stars, was one of the most tangible. He could almost hear the songs of worship they sang to their creator, and his reluctant heart he joined and in his reluctant heart he joined in as best he could. So this is him looking up at the sky, at night, I believe, at this time, and just really taking it all in as he's surrounded by nature because they're camping. So those two paragraphs kind of gave me joy. After the campsite, they're like about to go down for their nighttime, and the girls kind of have this conversation with their dad. And Missy starts it off and asking questions. And one of the ones that I highlighted was, is Jesus dying a legend? All right, because he kind of is explaining that the princess story may be true, but even if it's not true, it's legend. And she's like, well, is Jesus' story a legend? And he kind of explains that no, Jesus' story is a true story. And then she asked, is the Great Spirit another name for God? Because in the story of the tribe in the Indian princess, they say that the Great Spirit did this, the Great Spirit this. And so Matt kind of tells her that God is a spirit and he is great, so maybe. All right. What I have here in my annotations is that I love how Matt let the girls think and process their own thoughts in a relationship between the story and their knowledge of Jesus. As a parent, you want to kind of tell your children like all the answers, like you just want to help them through everything. But it is really neat when you sit back and allow them that time to process their own thoughts and kind of come to the realization of what they know, as opposed to telling them what they should think. All right. So I really like that he took the time to do that, and he waited. All right. So then it kind of turns. Missy acts like, how come he's so mean? And so Mac was stuck. Like he didn't know how to answer it. He kind of was like, how is a 6-year-old asking this question that a lot of wise people for centuries haven't been able to answer? But he said Jesus didn't think that his daddy was mean. His daddy was full of love and loved him very much. And his dad did not make him die. Jesus chose to die because he and his daddy loved you and me and everyone in the world. So he saved us from our sickness just like the princess did. So then this is Missy saying like, well, will I have to jump off of a cliff? Will you make me do that? Will you ask of me this task that the princess did? And so, of course, the answer is no. And then she goes deeper into it. Well, God asked me to jump off a cliff. And he says, no, he will never ask you to do anything like that. Um, so um, that seems to be enough for her. And he holds her, he tells her, I love you and good night. And then Kate kind of says, she asks good questions, doesn't she? And so Mac responds and says, she sure does. She's a special little girl. All right. My notes over here, when she's like, well, God asked me to jump off a cliff, I said there are other things expected of a believer. All right. And it might feel like the notion of jumping off of a cliff, like a sacrifice or giving up something great. And we are most definitely called to do certain things that someone who is not of the faith might look at like, wow, why would you have to do that? Why would you want to do that? And the answer that you have, not necessarily for that person, but for you to feel comfortable with the task that God gave you, is to really have that relationship with Him to understand your purpose. All right. One I can think of for myself is becoming a teacher. Why would someone give up their career that they worked hard in college to build a career, well, to get the education to then go on to build a career, only to then stop that career and start something else? And it's not like this parallel switch. It was like starting from the bottom as being a teacher. Not being a teacher is the bottom, but as far as like, it wasn't like I became the top of being a teacher. I had to start my career all over again, meaning from the bottom in pay, from the bottom in rank and responsibility. And it was a very humbling experience to start all over in my career as if I had just got out of college, but here I am, dang near 40. And one might say, well, why would you do such a thing? I really do feel like in my heart that this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where God needs me to be at this time in my life and a time in the life of my scholars and my coworkers and my family. It takes a lot of faith to sacrifice and jump like that. So that is what I got from that. That's kind of what's here. Like, God requires much from us as believers, and the sacrifice that Jesus made was loving, but we are also called to sacrifice, but not in that physical death way. But we do die daily to the sin and the urges that we have within ourselves, and just listening to God, to some people would be a sacrifice. As far as like, she asks good questions, doesn't she? I made a little note to keep asking those heartfelt questions, those hard and heartfelt questions. I do. When I'm doing my Bible study, I write down questions that's like why would God want us to do this? Why would God call him to do this? What was the meaning of this situation? How does this relate to me? How am I supposed to share this with somebody else? And things like that. The why and the how are hard questions. And then I said, God is okay with our questions as well. The same way Mac answered Missy's. I said, questions help us and others learn about God's character and helps us grow our faith. So, and I wrote this first, and then I wrote, keep asking the hard questions. So that is my notes. I ended it on today, 26. That, well, the day of me recording. This is 26, so March 26th. So I'm writing my dates here, and then I will move into chapter 3, which I haven't gotten into, so you'll see that video with a whole different hoodie on. So hopefully you like this video. Again, I apologize for some of the having to stop and start. Stuff was going on in my house, but these are my notes and my tags and my annotations from chapter 2. I hope that you had a chance to watch chapter 1 and the forward before, so you can come on this journey with me. If you would like to grab the book and read it, I think it's a very easy read. The chapters are only like, they're less than 10 pages each, so that's wonderful. They're about 10 pages, so we got 18, 28, 38, 49, so 10, 11 pages each one. I mean, considering that some pages stop like this and some, they start down here, I wouldn't really count that. I did say in a previous video I would show you where I would be able to use like a bigger post-it note, would be something like this. If I really wanted to, like, there's no need for me to have this, I could put a post-it note there as well to write a note. But I've been liking using my highlighters, my pen, my tags, and just really marking it up and making it my own. Hopefully you are doing the same. And if not, thank you for being along with me in my journey of reading through my favorite book so far, The Shack. All right, thanks. See you in the next video. Bye.